This meeting is being recorded.
I'm going to record this so that like when students miss it, I'm going to try to have all these recorded because when this stops and other people want to hop back on, all this information will be available to the people who've taken the class, like, and they can hopefully use it to help pass the test. So did somebody say easements?
Yeah.
Yes.
Easements are, so the definition of an easement is the right to cross over someone else's land. So one way you get rid of an easement is called a merger. It's when you buy both parcels, right? Because the definition of an easement is the right to cross over someone else's land. And when you own both of them, now you're not crossing over someone else's land anymore. So a merger would get rid of an easement.
Okay.
Okay. An ingress means going on the property or in the property, and then egress would be like exiting the property. So think of ingress as going in and then egress is exiting.
Mm-hmm.
This is tough because I can't really talk about like zoning and deed restrictions because these have nothing to do with easements at all. So we're not going to go over these definitions because zoning has a lot of things. Deed restrictions are kind of interesting because you know how like, oh, I guess I can talk about zoning and deed restrictions. Zoning is like a public restriction. It like affects the whole city, county, whole area. Deed restrictions affect like that homeowners association or that planned urban development, you know. So if we're talking like the area, God, I wish I could think of the name of it. It's like off of Avenue S in Palmdale, Ana Verde. That's like a planned urban development. They have an HOA. They were planning on being like a little community. So there's rules there. Like maybe you can't paint your house any color you want. Can't paint a purple house. You have to keep it like in the color scheme of the neighborhood so it doesn't stand out and bring values down, right? That would be a deed restriction. So it restricts you to what you can do in your area or in your condo or whatever, whereas zoning actually affects the whole city, county, or whatever. So both of those restrict what you can do with your property, but they're totally different. And a homestead is
So is that considered like Bear Valley and like Alpine also have like HOAs? Is that a zoning or a deed restriction?
That's a deed restriction.
It's a deed one. Okay.
Whatever those rules are in your area, they don't affect the whole city of Tehachapi. They only affect your area.
Okay.
So deed restrictions like restrict what you can do with a property. They're considered, so easements, zoning, and deed restrictions are all types of encumbrances, right? An encumbrance means I can't do exactly what I want with my property. Zoning laws tell you, yeah, if you own like a single family as like a area that's zoned R1, you can only build a house there. You can't build like a whole, you know, industrial park there. You know what I mean? But deed restrictions like limit what you can do, like, you know, in some homeowners associations are like, yeah, you can't change your oil in the driveway, or your garage where everybody like hangs out in the party room in your garage, you know? That would be a deed restriction. Or you can't paint your house the color that you want, or you can't put a 6-foot fence, you can only put a 3-foot fence. Okay, and then a homestead is considered not a restriction or encumbrance. It's considered a what is it considered? Not a restriction.
It's a lease.
Instead is not a restriction. It's like a benefit. It's something to protect your property. So it's not, it doesn't restrict it actually. It's the opposite of that. And I can't come up with the word, but I'll do that later. Does somebody have a question? Okay. The term ingress and egress are associated with the word access. To ingress means to go upon the land, to egress means to exit or leave the land. A man conveys a life estate to a sister. What does the word convey mean?
Gives or?
Yeah, give it away, deed it to somebody, sell it, whatever. Conveying means alienate. Another word for convey is alienate, convey, give away, deed. It means to get rid of it, to give it to somebody else. So conveys his life estate to his sister. Under the terms of the man's conveyance, the property will pass to his niece upon his sister's death. Which of these best describes the niece's interest in the property during the sister's lifetime? Does she have a redemption, a reversion, a remainder, or a life estate per autre vie? Which I don't know.
Remainder?
Remainder?
Yes. At that moment, the niece has a remainder. She's going to get the remainder. Oh, wait. Under the terms of the parental pastor sees upon his sister's death. Oh, no.
Hmm.
Wait. Yeah, that's right. And a remainder. If it was going to go back to the man that gave the life estate away, it would be a reversion. It would revert back to him. When you lease your property, when you're a landlord and you lease your property to your tenant, you have an estate in reversion, meaning once the tenant moves out, the property, like the possession rights, revert back to you. So revert means go back to the original person. Remainder is to go on to someone new. And a life estate pour archer V or whatever means it's based on your life. The purchase of a ticket for a professional sporting event gives the bearer what? An easement, a right to park his car, a license to sell food and beverage at the sporting event, a license to enter and claim a seat for the duration of a game, an easement and gross interest in the professional sporting team. Some of these are so stupid.
I'm gonna say to watch the game, duration of the game.
Yeah, it's a license. So a license is something that can be given and taken away. And my example in my videos is the good neighbor gate. I used to live on a really large property, like 2 acres. And if I wanted to go to my neighbor, I had to go all the way down and then all the way up to his house. But we had a good neighbor gate between us. So he'd say, hey, Kathy, we just left the gate unlocked. I could go over to his property through the gate. He could come over to mine. But it's personal and revocable. So you want to write this down. License equals personal and revocable. In other words, it's for me. The new neighbor, he was not a fan of. When I sold my house, he was not a fan of the new guy who moved next door. He put a lock on that gate. He's like, I don't want that neighbor coming over. But between he and I, he's like, yeah, if you ever need to go shopping in my house for a cup of sugar, or need some extra paper towels or toilet paper for the kids, just come on over, I never took advantage of that. He never took advantage of it. We got along great. So a license is like something that is personal and revocable. It's the permission to do something. Just like when you go to Knott's Berry Farm, there's a brick that basically says they give you permission to enter the park, which also means they can take that away. When you give someone permission to do something, you have the right to take away the permission whenever you want. An easement doesn't work that way. It runs with the land. But this professional ticket thing is what a license is. They can change their mind if you don't act accordingly at the sporting event. Easements grant access, not use. Commercial licenses, such as those required to sell beverages, souvenirs, or services, cover extended periods. Although tickets to sporting events, concert shows, and the like are technically licenses, they differ from most in their degree of restriction. For example, a concert ticket doesn't let you sit anywhere or go wander backstage to meet the performers. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a fee simple title? So what does fee simple mean? If you have a fee estate, what does it mean?
You own it?
I own it. And what is a less than freehold or leasehold estate? It means I don't own it, but I have rights of possession, right? When you lease a property, you don't own the property, but you have the right to live there and sleep there and have parties there, right? So less than freehold estate or a leasehold estate means I have rights of possession, but I don't own it. A fee or freehold estate is what? It's the most interest I can have in land because I own it. It's the right to use, possess, encumber, convey, alienate. You have a lot of things you can do with it when you own it, right? So which of the following is not a characteristic of a fee simple estate? It is transferable by will or intestate. So can we transfer our fee simple estate when we want to?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, right? We can give it away, we can sell it, right? Intestate means when we die without a will, it still goes to somebody. We're not here to figure that out because we didn't make a will. But if we die intestate, which means without a will, it still goes on. There's rights of succession. Is it of indefinite duration? Is that part of being a fee simple? Yeah, it's of indefinite duration. Why? We don't know when we're going to kick our bucket, right? Most of us don't know when we're going to kick our bucket, right? So it's of indefinite duration. I don't know when I'm going to die. I'm hoping it's a long, long time from now, but I don't know. It's always free of encumbrances. Is that true about a fee simple title?
No.
No, it has limitations. All property has limitations. An encumbrance is a limitation. So even the zoning would be a limitation. Like I want to put a concert theater there, but it's only zoned for a house. I can't put a concert theater there. Or let's say I have the, ability to build a ladder to go to the moon. Am I going to be allowed to build a ladder there and go to the moon? No. If I could dig a hole to China, and China that I could go to, can I do that? No, so no, it's not always free of encumbrances. So on the test, when the words always and never are used, they're pretty much wrong, okay? Because nothing's always, like, we're getting a sliver of a legal, right? I mean, there's nothing in legalese that's always and never, you know what I mean? Is it transferable with or without consideration? Yes, we can transfer it with consideration, like we could sell it for money, or we can give it to our grandchildren because we love them so much. So the answer here, it's always free of encumbrances. That's not true about a fee simple estate, but all the other ones are true. It's transferable by will or intestate. It's of indefinite duration, and it can be transferred with or without consideration. Does anybody have any questions? Oh. Melinda says she's here. Oh. She's like, I've been here for 10 minutes. You're not letting me in. Are you guys on now?
Yeah,
Sorry, darling.
that's all right.
Yeah, I didn't see. Normally it flashes up in front of me, like, more people to admit, and for whatever reason, you all didn't come up. You must have like come in right when I was searching for something else and wasn't on the screen.
Oh, okay.
The word improvement would refer to all of the following except trade fixtures, streets, a sanitary sewer system, or a foundation.
Improvement, trade fixtures,
Right. Trade fixtures are considered what?
chattel.
Yeah, they're personal property. Trade fixtures are necessary to your trade or business, and you're allowed to remove them whenever you move. So in other words, a dentist chair, even though it's screwed in tight to the floor so nobody can tip it over when they're torturing you on the dentist chair, when you move your office, you get to take your dentist chair with you. So that's a trade fixture. Other fixtures, like a ceiling fan that's in the back of my car, once I install it on the ceiling, it becomes part of the real property. But trade fixtures do not become part of the real property unless you leave them behind. Let's say you move your dentistry office and you just leave that old nasty chair there and you never pick it up, then it would become a fixture for the person who has it, but it's because you left it behind. The term trade fixture, it refers to an item installed by a tenant in a rented commercial property that he or she removes at the end of the occupancy. More on this topic follows. The other things would be improvements. In other words, an improvement would be considered real property. When you improve your property, it's real property. Trade fixtures are chattel, which sounds like cattle because they're movable. Which of the following are considered to be personal property? Bathtubs, a wood-burning fireplace, a furnace, or patio furniture?
Patio furniture.
Correct. The most interest one can hold, of the following, which best defines a fee simple estate? The most interest one can hold in land, a life estate, an estate for years, title in the owner without limitations.
The first one.
Yeah, the most interest you can have in land, right? That's the definition of a fee simple estate. A family rents a vacation home from July 5th, 2005 to January 1st, 2006. Their tenancy would, Their tenancy would probably be classified as a fee simple estate, an estate for years, month to month, or a periodic tenancy.
Easy. Too easy.
What is it?
Years.
An estate for years, yes. It's crazy because an estate for years can be measured in days, weeks, months, or years. The main thing about an estate for years is it has a start date and an end date. So an estate for years could literally be from January 1st to January 22nd. That's an estate for years. It's just this weird number of days. So it can be measured in days, weeks, months, or years. It has a start date and an end date. Okay. A month to month is considered a periodic tenancy. It can be month to month, year to year, week to week. That's considered a periodic tenancy. It's successive periods of the same amount of time. So it's a month to month and a periodic tenancy are literally synonymous for each other. And a fee simple estate is one that you own. The other three are considered less than freehold or leasehold estates. There's two other, so there's the estate for years and the periodic tenancy. Can somebody give me another type of tenancy? Here you go, Jarita.
I know. I'm sorry that he
All right.
does it all the time. I'm muting.
Okay, there's the estate of sufferance, right? Because the landlord is suffering because the tenant won't move out. And then
Tenancy at will?
because the deadbeat boyfriend's got your remote in your slippers and he's like commandeering your television, but he ain't paying no rent. So there's the estate at will and the estate at sufferance, and then the periodic tenancy, and then the estate for years. Okay. You need all four of them. An easement cannot be revoked by the holder of the servient tenement. Anybody can revoke the easement at any time. The dominant tenement, the party benefiting from the easement.
It can be revoked by. Oh man, dominant, I would guess.
Dominant or servient?
Yeah, so it's the servient. The servient tenement is the one that serves the other person. So the servient tenement is serving you and they can't just not serve. The dominant tenement can say, yeah, man, I got a helioport on my house and I'm just not going to use this stinking easement anymore. Or I found a new way to get on my property. I don't need your easement anymore. So the dominant tenement is also the person who's benefited. So the dominant tenement is also the party benefiting from the easement. So if you knew these two definitions and knew these were synonymous, you could immediately, say, yeah, it can't be either one of these because they're both the same. So yeah, the servient tenement is the tenement that is burdened. Do you want me to read the description or are you guys getting it?
Got it.
Joe and Nancy bought a store building and took title as joint tenants. Nancy died testate. So she died testate. That means she died with a will. Joe now owns the store as a joint tenant with rights of survivorship, in severalty, in trust, as a tenant in common with Nancy's heirs.
First one.
No, he was a joint tenant with rights of survivorship, but there was only two people, and now she croaked. So now there's one. So how does he own it now? Inseveralty means one individual alone. Something in severalty, it's one individual alone. So if Joe and Nancy and a third person, right, then he would own it in joint tenancy with the other person who's remaining. But since she croaked and there was just the two of them, now he owns it in severalty. Doesn't matter that she had a will. The people on the will are out of luck because it came with rights of survivorship. So it's a trick question.
The severalty is like screwing it up, like you're severing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
severing.
individual alone. Chuck Norris.
Severalty.
So
I would
if,
say-
if the example was like three people in, then it would have been the first one, correct?
Correct. If there was a third person, then he would own it in joint tenancy with just the other person, 50-50, because the one croaked. So initially they all had 33 and a third, but when Nancy died, Joe and somebody else would have owned it 50-50 and in joint tenancy. But since there was only two people to begin with and one died, now he owns it all alone because he's one individual alone.
Correct.
Make sense?
Yep.
Severalty means sole ownership. The Easton versus Strasburger case help define a broker's duty to disclose material facts to potential buyers. Which of the following best describes the disclosure required? An advertisement to obtain a professional property inspection, a list of property defects that are known or should be known, a statement that the property is being sold as is, a list of obvious property defects, and any functional obsolescence. Why do you think that Easton versus Strasburger case was supposed to help people if we have to make a disclosure as an agent? What do you think we should disclose?
A list of property defects that are known or should be known.
The last one?
Obvious. I think it's the obvious
No, it's a list of property defects that are known or should be known.
one. Okay.
So what's obvious, so obvious is one of those words. What's obvious to some of us, I mean, how many people have been married? Obvious, you should kick your dirty shoes off before you get into the bed or whatever, you know, and then you're like, oh my God, I gotta do all the sheets again. I'm just saying, obvious is one of those things that's very
True.
subjective, you know? So property defects that are known or should be known. In other words, just because, let's say, somebody else is saying that they can't get in. There you go. Yeah, it's not giving me my like little notifications when the normally people are coming in. Okay, so yeah, so let's say you know that the roof leaks and the buyer never asked. Guess what? You're supposed to say if the house is on a septic tank and the buyer never asked, you have to tell them because you know it could be a problem. So there's things that you should just say whether or not they ask or not, and then obviously things that you can see that are defects you're going to as well, you know, note. So as agents, we have to like when we do our agent visual inspection disclosure, it's all about finding defects in the property. And I'm going to tell you, I can go into a brand new construction and find plenty of defects. So it's hard to tell your seller like, hey, I got to walk through your property and I'm going to like seem like a nitpicky little whatever. But in all honesty, this is what I have to do to show that I actually look through your property and I'm telling things to your buyer that they may not have noticed because they get to buy the property in as is condition subject to their inspection rights. In other words, knowing what as is. And a lot of times when they first come through, they're like, oh, it's so beautiful and I'm so happy. And you know, you don't want them to have something like come up later that makes them upset. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Under the terms of a net lease, a commercial tenant would usually be responsible for paying lender's fees, real estate taxes, income tax payments, mortgage interest expense. This is one that we didn't really go over in the book. A net lease is when you're paying part of the expenses of the property. So you're paying like things like it'll say here, pays a portion of the taxes, insurance fees, and maintenance costs of the property in addition to rent. Net leases are most commonly used with commercial real estate. And then there's double net and triple net. And to be honest, I have done some commercial real estate, but not enough to be able to like break down double net and triple net. But basically what like you're paying a part of the property taxes and stuff like that when you're paying a net lease. And that's all you really need to know for the test. A tenancy in common requires which of the following? An arrangement for possession, husband and wife, equal interest, or divided interest.
Husband and wife.
No, that would be community property. Has to be husband and wife. Tenancies in common so they're different than joint tenancies in a lot of ways. Like joint tenancy, you have to be on the same time, same title, equal amounts of interest, and the unity of possession, meaning everybody gets to inhabit the place, right? So even that one, you have to kind of figure out who's going to be there when or whatever, if it's like that.
Equal interest.
No. So TTIP, joint tenancy requires equal interest, and tenancy in common is like the opposite. You can each have different amounts of interest. I can have 90, you can have 10, I can have 80, you can have 10, and we can have 10 other people, you have one. You know what I mean? Percent interest.
Okay, got it.
We don't have to be named at the same time. We don't need to be named in the same title, but the one commonality is that unity of possession. In other words, if I have a 1% interest, it doesn't mean that I just have to stay in 1% of the place.
Okay. tenancy in common is just meaning,
So you have to arrange for possession.
so everybody has their, okay,
You would
their
arrange.
amount of interest in it.
Yeah, we don't have to have equal amounts of interest. So tenancy in common
Yeah.
is a situation in which two or more people have ownership interest in a property. Each owner has the right to leave his or her share of the property to any beneficiary, so it can be willed. Tenancy in common requires all tenants to share the unity of possession, which means all tenants have a common right to use and possess the property. So in other words, we'd have to figure out what's fair in a tenancy in common.
Gotcha. So that's the arrangement.
In order to comply with the regulations of the state housing law, a person should seek the issuance of a building permit from the nearest office of the Department of Housing and Community Development, the California Department of Real Estate, the local Department of Building and Safety, the California Department of Urban Renewal.
The building and safety.
Yeah, you go to the local building and safety office when you want to make to comply with building regulations. Also, if you're purchasing like a piece of land, you'd go to building and safety and say, can I build here? What are the restrictions? Blah, blah, blah. Some people really think that, oh, I'm going to buy this piece of land and I can put a mobile home here. They may not allow that. Or I can put a mobile home here while I'm building my real house. Or I could put an RV here while I'm building my real house. Yeah, you can't always do that stuff. And so as agents, we always have to tell people, listen, I know you're really excited about this piece of land and all the things you want to do with it. And I would go to building and safety to make sure. And I would also call the water company to make sure you can get a water meter. And I would do this and I would do that, you know, because those are important things. We don't do it for them. They have to do their own investigations, because if we misspeak, if we heard wrong and then we convey that, now we're misrepresenting and can go to court. So it's better to guide them to get all of their questions answered. And, you know, if they're a new person who's purchasing something, you're going to be like, okay, I would like look into this and I'd look into that, you know. Mr. Smith owns a real property, owns real property in severalty. So we know what severalty means, right? That means one individual alone. So Mr. Smith owns his property all by himself. This term is used to legally describe ownership by several tenants in common, an individual, co-tenants, or a remainder.
An individual.
Individual.
Of course. Land that is subject to an easement is said to be appurtenant, encroached, encumbered, or restricted.
Encumbered.
Encumbered, right? Encumbrance means I can't do exactly what I want with my property. An easement is a physical encumbrance to the property. It means I can't physically maybe do what I want to my property. I can't put a fence to keep the other guy off. I can't put my swimming pool there. Someone's driving over there. Like, I can't do whatever I want with my property. So there's two types of encumbrances. There's money encumbrances, which are like liens, attachments, the things that make it that you have to pay something off in order to have a clean title. Kind of like your pink slip to your car, right? When you're making payments, you don't really have the pink slip to your car till you pay it off. So money encumbrances, liens are the same thing with your property. And then you have other encumbrances like that are physical encumbrances, like zoning laws and private restrictions and easements. Okay, so there's two different types of encumbrances. Who knows what the word impertinent means?
Runs with the land.
Runs with the land. What is that? Who knows what the word encroached means when your property has an encroachment or is encroached?
Encroach.
Something that's blocking it.
Encroach is when someone builds on your property or you build on theirs.
Oh yeah, when they build on part of your land.
Correct. People all the time say, well, where's the property line? Oh, it's where the trees are. But are the trees on my land or are they on your land? And then some people put a fence up because they don't want the trees on their land. They want them to be the responsibility of the other person. But it turns out that actually the trees were part of their property, or vice versa. They could put this fence on the other side and they're like, I want to own all the trees, and decide what's going to happen to them. And they'll put the fence on the one side and they didn't really get a survey done. A survey is going to tell you exactly where those property lines are. So encroached means like sometimes people's properties have something built on it that back in the day people didn't check, right? Restricted is weird because it's kind of like a term that you would use, like if you can work on a restricted license, your license can be restricted to a broker. If you do naughty things, you know how you're supposed to like do your live scan and all that stuff. In order to be a real estate agent, you're supposed to be a person of good moral character. And so when you renew your license every 4 years, they kind of pull up your background check again to make sure like you're a good person and you haven't done naughty things. I have a friend who got a DUI. She got a DUI. Someone rear-ended her on 4th of July, but she had been drinking and she ended up getting a DUI even though she didn't cause the accident. And then she was in lending at the time. And so they have to renew their license like every year. And so she turned back into just a real estate agent for a while because, she kind of was really, this was like an ugly thing on her record. And so what they did is they limited her to just working with a specific broker and allowed her to work with that one broker. But, because something came up negative on her thing, it affected her.
Well, when does it clear?
Well, I think DUIs clear like kind of in 3 years, you know what I mean? But during that first initial stuff that you're going through, and at the end of the day, it's not going to affect your ability to get a license normally, as long as you disclose it.
In California, it's like 7 years.
Yeah, I think it falls off totally, but I think that like even if you're like working as a sales rep for a company and stuff, usually after 3 years they'll let you drive like a company vehicle and stuff, as long as it's not something you do again or whatever. Which of the following is a type of freehold estate? A life estate, an estate at will, an estate at sufferance, or an estate at years? Which one would be considered a fee or freehold estate?
Life
Life estate.
Yeah, the other 3 are definitely less than freehold estates. A life estate is that one where we talked about Joe, right, having a life estate and then giving it to his niece or sister, and then and then the niece got it when the sister died or whatever. Yeah, life estate is based on someone's life. In like 23 years of doing real estate, I've heard of like 2 of my students having like an aunt or an uncle or something that had a life estate. I can come up with scenarios of why you would do a life estate, but I've never seen one in my own transactions. Okay. An owner who has a permanent right to cross over an adjoining owner's land has a license, a party wall, an easement, or a riparian right.
An easement?
Yes. What is a license? Does anybody remember from a few questions ago?
Like
A right to do something, but you don't own the property.
A license is personal and revocable, like a theater ticket.
Yeah.
Or like the neighbor gate. An easement is the right to cross over someone else's land. A party wall. Who knows what a party wall is?
I don't know. It sounds fun.
Probably none of you had telephones back in the day where you could hear other people talking in like a party line, but when phones first came out, they weren't like, not everyone had a phone, and so sometimes like several people shared a line and you could like literally listen in on other people's phone calls, so it's kind of fun. But a party wall is a shared wall, like in a condo. You know how you have a shared wall in a condo with like your neighbor? That's a party wall.
Okay.
And what's a riparian right?
What, river, water.
Water rights.
Water
Rights.
rights on rivers or water courses, right? Moving water would be riparian rights. In other words, if you had like the rights to the river so far into the river, to have like a little dock or something like that, so when you have property that is water, oftentimes you own beyond the actual land, you own somewhat into the water so that during high and low tide, your boat doesn't like end up on dirt, If the owner of a condo defaults on his mortgage, the owners of the remaining units are not affected by the defaulting owner's actions, must immediately institute a suit to quiet title, become subject to foreclosure, must file an injunction against the defaulting owner.
Become subject to foreclosure?
No, the owners of the remaining units don't become subject to foreclosure because
They're not affected by
Yeah.
anything.
they're not
Okay.
affected. When you own a condo, you basically own, like you own a
Oh,
house.
Yeah,
You own your place and then the mortgage company defaults on you for your unit, but they don't have anything to do with the other owners. Which of the following could be considered real property? A leasehold estate, a lease, a chattel, or a riparian right?
leasehold estates.
Nope.
Oh, no, chattel.
Riparian rights.
Riparian rights, because you own something.
Chattel.
No, chattel sounds like cattle because it's movable. So real property is immovable by
Real
law.
property.
So a river
Oh,
doesn't
that's
move.
the riparian thing. Okay, got it.
Yeah. But chattel, a lease is a type. So a lease is a chattel mortgage. In other words, a lease
Mhm.
is literally a piece of paper, which is movable, that allows you to inhabit a property. A lease is literally a chattel. It's a piece of paper and you can move a piece of paper anywhere and it allows you to inhabit a property. Chattel is movable. It sounds like cattle because it's movable, whereas real property is immovable by law.
I
So-
know you said this in the last one. You explained that. I don't know where my mind went, but what was riparian again?
Riparian has to do with water rights, right? Your rights on a river or
Okay.
a water course or a stream. Literal rights would be on a lake or a pond or the ocean.
Okay.
So moving water, that's like moving like a river is riparian, and then literal
Okay.
is like where it's the waves just sort of lap up, but they're not moving, like you're not moving, the water's not moving to another location.
So like riptide, riparian. I'm gonna go with that. Okay.
All right. When a property is sold, the riparian rights of the property run with the land, thus making them real property. Riparian water rights is a system for allocating water among those who possess land along its path. It has its origin in English common law. Riparian water rights exist in many jurisdictions with common law heritage, such as Canada, Australia, and the states in the eastern United States. If the purchasers of a real property have title to the property placed in the name of Josh Marquez and Ethel Marquez, husband and wife, it is presumed that they're going to hold title as joint tenants, community property, tenants in common, or severalty.
Tenants in common.
Community and community property.
Joint tenants.
Nope, community property is husband and wife. They're assuming husband and wife.
Community.
Hang on a second. Sorry, two of my students are having issues with the thing dropping. Let's see who's all in. I see Fabiola. I see Michael. Okay. Okay. This community property is for his husband and wife to own. So, and they each own 50% of the property. Joint tenants, you cannot will it, but in community property, you can will your property if you have a will. If you don't have a will, the property would automatically go to your husband or wife if you died. But if you do have a will, you can will it to your kids and everything else. Remember, a joint tenancy automatically comes with rights of survivorship, so there are nobody can get willed anything. In community property, you can also take community property with rights of survivorship, which means even if you have a will and you have kids, that property does not go to the kids, it'll just go to the remaining spouse.
Mhm.
A portion of Sarah's building was inadvertently built on Jack's land. Oh my goodness. This is called an easement, avulsion, encroachment, or accretion.
Encroachment.
Encroachment.
Encroachment. There, we already talked about it. We already know what an easement is. I'm sure all you guys know, right? What's avulsion? It's the sudden tearing away of land by the action of water. Like when a dam breaks. I was just on a lake this weekend where literally the dam had broken at one time and that all the water there had been gone. And literally it took like where there were little points where people had their house. It literally took the whole point in the house and everything and just washed it away. That's an avulsion. Okay. And then an accretion is the gradual adding of soil, like through water or through like a sandstorm or whatever.
Profile.
So accretion, ACC, is ADD, and avulsion is like sudden tearing away. The ownership of a condo is an estate in real property consisting of an undivided interest in common elements and a separate ownership of space. The estate in the defined space is which are the following: an estate for years, a fee simple estate with proprietary lease, or an estate for life. What do you own when you own a condo?
A fee simple estate.
Yes, just a plain old fee simple estate. They just added this proprietary stuff on there to give you all, got all confused.
Worked.
It worked. We're trying to uncover those things in this class. That's what this is about. Let's uncover the things that they're trying to trick you on. Who usually sets deed restrictions on a subdivision? The permanent lender, the state and local ordinances, the developer, or the Federal Housing Administration? Who sets deed restrictions?
Think
I'm going with
it's state and local ordinance.
No.
No,
That's
it's the
zoning.
federal housing.
No,
the lender.
no.
Oh, wow.
For deed restrictions, when you buy that little condo or that area that's a planned urban development, you know who made
Oh, the developer.
the developer. Why? Because conformity breeds value. And you can see it, right? If you go out to Lake LA and you have a mansion and a mobile home and a shack and then a regular house, right? They don't have a lot of conformity there and the values aren't the same, right? But you go to Valencia, where there's a lot of conformity, even like the places you shop and everything are very conforming to the way things look, that breeds more value. So developers know this, and so they make some rules and regulations because they know if you are the one who needs to have your purple and pink, you know, poppy looking house, right? You're going to bring down the value of all the regular houses that are painted just like a pretty color of sand. So they have a rule saying you can't do that. Or, you know, they'll have a rule saying you're not allowed to put newspaper and foil for your window coverings, you know, because they know that brings down the value of the place. So deed restrictions are set by the developer or somebody who built it, the builder developer. Okay. State and local ordinances, that would be more like zoning laws.
Mm.
Federal Housing Administration, they have like strict restrictions and stuff when people buy with an FHA loan. But they don't dictate, like they don't dictate what happens to the house. They just dictate if they're going to give a loan on it or they're going to insure the loan on it because they actually don't give a loan. So yeah, the developer sets deed restrictions. The goal of these restrictions in theory is to provide the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the community, and restrictions often exist to help the developer meet their responsibilities. The developer's responsibilities include making sure the streets, curbs, sidewalks, utilities, and gutters are completed and functional. Nancy Cohen purchased a property with a highly desirable view, which included an easement. Which of these terms best describes the easement? A lien, an encumbrance, an adverse possession, or an encroachment?
Encumbrance.
Yes. It's and an easement is a physical encumbrance. What's a lien?
Something like on your loan, like it's a
money encumbrance.
Yeah, it's like on your loan or something. Yeah.
Property taxes. A judgment against you that's hanging over your head.
You don't want it. You don't want it.
No. Adverse
Something
possession.
you don't want.
You don't want it. What's an adverse possession? You know how people talk about like squatters' rights? So there's a way to do that, right? If you like live in the property and you pay the property taxes for 5 years and right, it's like, it's got to be hostile to the true owner, but no confrontation. It has to be for 5 years and you have to pay the property taxes on the property for 5 years. You can actually get the property by what they call adverse possession. And you can get an easement by prescription by continually crossing over someone's land, and they know that you're doing it and they don't like that you're doing it and you're doing it against their will. It's hostile to the true owner, but again, you don't need a confrontation. You don't need to punch anyone in the face. But if you do that for 5 years, you get an easement by prescription. So an adverse possession is very similar to an easement by prescription. Okay. And an encroachment, we already know, is when somebody builds on your property accidentally or you built on theirs. So here's an encumbrance is something pertaining to a property that might diminish its value, such as an easement which grants rights of use or access. For example, an electric company may have a 15-foot easement running across the back of a property for servicing underground lines, which means the homeowner could not build a pool, a patio, a terrace, or any other permanent structure in that area. A deed conveys ownership to the grantee as long as the existing building is not torn down. What type of estate is this? A determinable fee estate, a non-destructible estate, a life estate per atra v, with measuring the life being of the building, a fee simple absolute estate.
The life estate per that one.
No, it's a determinable fee estate. So, and in the video I talk about like no drinking alcohol is called defeasible estate. Well, they've changed the words around and they're now using this word determinable as well as defeasible, which means the title can be defeated. In other words, hey, we'll transfer you this property, but if you tear down this one wall, then we can get our property back.
Okay,
So it's a fee simple defeasible, or also called a determinable fee estate.
determinable and defeasible are equal.
It's subject to something like no drinking alcohol or tearing down a wall. This is a new question that they added probably in the last year and a half. It was always no drinking alcohol for years. A defeasible estate, also known as determinable, is created when a grantor transfers land conditionally.
Conditional, that's it.
Conditional transfer.
Conditionally.
Upon the happening of the event or conditions stated by the grantor, the transfer may be void or at least subject to annulment.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Let us. Still here. Okay. Let us, I don't know, my Dropbox is full. I don't know why they keep telling me that. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and check out of this test. So you guys are gonna take this test today. You guys are gonna go ahead and take this property ownership test, not today, but somehow this week. So that this is like, you know, if you take this test, see how you do. Somebody was upset they got like a 72. I'm like, guys, this is a good score like when you're first starting to take these tests. So if you're getting in the even in the 50s and 60s, usually people start on like the high 50s and low 60s. And then like in a week or so, like when they take the test a second time, they'll be like, okay, I'm in the 70s. And when they take it the third time, they get into the 80s. So like that's a normal progression. So if you're getting in the 50s, 60s, and when you're starting out, you're going to take it a couple more times over the course of the next 8 weeks, and you're going to continue to learn and grow, and you're going to be like, oh my God, I went from a 70 to an 85 or a 70 to 90s, you know? So don't beat yourself up. I mostly want to see that you guys are doing the work more than like I care about your score. Because I know if you do the work, you'll get the grade. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things like, I know if you do it, you'll get it. All right, let's see. Oh, I can't do it this way. I always forget. Hang on. I gotta go through the special link for CompuTrainer because it's a special link that's associated to this particular group. And the only other thing I'd want to make sure you do is don't get hooked on just taking one test all the time, like switch it up because it's important to learn the different ways that different tests work. And I know one of you guys, John, I know you're doing the broker's version of these, but you're gonna find that they're extremely, extremely similar. And if you come up with questions you don't understand, let me know.
Okay.
And do wait for your certificates. You don't need all the other junk. You need the paperwork that DRE gives you, or like from the DRE, and then you need the certificate. And it might just be one certificate with all the classes on it. And it might be multiple certificates. Depends if they all fit on there.
Yeah.
Okay, new share.
I still need Harvey to sign off, so
Huh?
I still need my broker to sign off on that one.
Yeah, it always takes the broker forever to do that because they have to literally look back at all the years. If they only give a partial list, they'll kick it back and say, well, you said you're a realtor for 10 years. We need every year of what you did in real estate. It's like a big pain in the butt. I was with 2 different companies over the term of 13 years when I got my broker's license, and I had to go back to my old broker, and that was just a real pain in the fanny.
I deleted half of it, if not all of it.
Huh?
He probably already deleted half of it, if not all of it. The previous broker.
Right? Yeah, it's a pain. So you have to go back to all your brokers and they both have to fill them out and everything else. So let's go property interests. Can you guys see my screen that says property interests?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one, and this one only has 54 questions, whereas the prep agent has 100. But this is just, this section only has, some of them have 100 and some of them have 20 and some of them have 70, you know, so this one's just broken down a little different. A fee simple absolute estate would be best defined as an estate based on a condition subsequent, an estate without encumbrances which can be easily transferred, the highest interest a person can have in real property, or an estate which is less than freehold.
C.
Yes. A fee simple estate is also the highest interest you can have in land in most questions, but the fee simple absolute is truly the highest interest you can have in real property. Basically, an absolute says it doesn't really have any encumbrances. The reality of it is all properties have encumbrances. Of the following, which best defines a fee simple estate? Title in the owner without limitations, an estate for years, a life estate, or the most interest you can have in land.
D.
Right. Notice this is exactly for word the same question we had in prep agent, right? So some of them are exact, and you'll notice on the state exam, some of them will be exact and most of them will not be. An estate is granted to A for the life of X. A dies while X is still living. The estate ceases to exist, reverts to the original grantor, vests in X for his life, or vests in the heirs or devisees of A.
D.
It's D.
D.
Yeah. So it's granted to A for the life of X, but A dies. So X is still living. So A still really has the ownership interest in the property. So it would go to the heirs of A. If X died, then A's estate would be gone. But since A died, their estate was still there because X was still living. So it would vest in the heirs or devisees of, and a device is like a will. So when somebody's a devisor, they're the giver of a will, and then the devisee is the receiver of the will. Tyson owns a store building he leased to Crown for 7 years. Crown's estate in the store building is personal property, an estate for years, a chattel real, or all of the above.
Estate for years.
Estate for, yeah.
It's all of the above. A lease is personal property. Remember, a lease is a piece of paper that allows you. A lease is a chattel real. That's it. That's one of the words for a lease is called a chattel real. And this particular one is an estate for years because it has a start date and an end date for 7 years. So this answer would be all of the above. Another trick question. An instrument which usually transfers possession of real property but does not transfer ownership is a mortgage, a sublease, a security agreement, or an easement.
Sublease.
Sublease.
Correct. I want someone to tell me the definition of a mortgage, if anybody remembers what it is.
Piece of paper.
Oh.
Piece of paper that says what?
Is
The note to pay.
Is a promise to pay.
No, the promise to pay is the promissory note and the evidence of the debt. The mortgage is the document that secures the property for the debt. It basically says, if I don't pay, you can sell.
Mhm.
So a mortgage is a security agreement, a type of security agreement. And then everybody knows what an easement is today because we've only had it a million times. A mortgage and a security agreement are used in borrowing money, and an easement gives the right to use someone else's property. With an easement, that right is usually not an exclusive right to use or an exclusive right to possess. Which of the following would be considered real property? A maturing grape crop, which is under a sales contract to be harvested later. Trade fixtures that a tenant has installed but which are removable without damage. A built-in refrigerator in a mobile home that is not attached to a permanent foundation. Or a bearing wall in a single-family house. Which one of those is real property?
D.
Barren wall.
The bearing wall in the house, it's immovable by law, right? Everyone always talks about, you can't move that wall, it's a bearing wall. I mean, they really can, you just have to do something to make sure it's gonna hold the roof up. But yeah, all the other things are considered personal property. And they are movable. Personal property can never become real property, can never be hypothecated, can never be alienated, or none of the above.
D.
None of the above.
Correct. Okay, tell me why. What does hypothecated mean?
I know, but I forgot.
Hypothecated is what you do when you give something up as collateral. So like when you get a loan on your car, the car is the collateral for the loan. And so you hypothecated the car, right? So that's what hypothecation is. It's when you give something as collateral for a debt. Okay. So personal property can become hypothecated because we do it all the time with our cars. And when we buy 12 rooms of furniture from Ashley Furniture, right? What about alienated? What does alienated mean?
Like dessert.
Yeah, give it away. Let it go, release it, put it on Facebook Marketplace, whatever, alienated. So personal property can be alienated. So I just want to make sure you know why it's D. I don't want you just to know the answer is D. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Ooh, this is a long, probably horrible question. Jones conveyed his ranch to Brown using a land contract. The ranch was serviced by a mutual water company, and Jones was a stockholder in the company. The stock which Jones owned was appurtenant to the land. Does Brown have to enter into a separate contract for the stock of the mutual water company? A, yes, and stock is always personal property and therefore not included in the land contract. No, because land in California can't be sold without water rights. Yes, because real property is not always accompanied by water rights. No, because the stock was appurtenant to the land and therefore part of the real property and part of the land contract.
That sounds
D.
about right.
Yeah, it was appurtenant. It ran with the land. So appurtenances tend to be stock in a mutual water company, easements, encroachments, and something else I can't think of right now. Which of the following is always required in joint tenancy ownership of real property? The clause with rights of survivorship, equal shares of interest in the property by each of the joint tenants, a husband and wife relationship, or all of the above?
E.
B, equal shares, TTIP, tri-tip, time, title, interest, and possession. They have to enter on the same time, be named in the same title, have equal amounts of interest, and the unity of possession. And it automatically comes with rights of survivorship, so there's no clause about that. Legally and technically, property is defined as freehold estates, things which buyers and sellers own, the rights or interest a person has in the thing owned or personal property.
E.
Huh?
A.
E.
It's C.
C.
When we own property, remember I told you we own a bundle of rights? It's like, what do we, so truthfully, if somebody gives you something like a Barbie doll in a box and says you can never touch it, and we're just gonna stash it in the closet. Like, what do you really own then? Do you know what I mean? You can't look at it, you can't play with it, you can't take it out of the box. Like, what kind of present is that? So what we really own when we own property. I had a Barbie like that, okay?
I have so many
It
like
seemed
that
like
still.
it. You looked mad. I'm like, that must have happened to her.
I have so many like that. They're gonna be worth so much more, I swear.
Like, you
I
can't
have
take
to
it-
Kathy, I have to
They're in mint
apologize to my
condition.
daughter.
Oh. Yeah, it's like, hello, I want to play with the damn Barbie. Like, I don't want it to sit in a box, right? So when we don't really own property of any kind, really, it's what we can do with it that allow, like, right? That's the thing, right? If you, somebody said, here's a piece of land, Tara, you're not allowed to sell it. You're not allowed to go on it. You can't build on it. You can't do this with it. You can't camp on it. It's like, okay, so like, what can, like, what the, I'm just going to pay property taxes on it, you know? So
Right?
I have this Barbie in a box and I have to dust it every week to keep the value. I'm like, that does not sound like something I want, you know?
Why? Yeah.
So property, legally and technically, property is basically a bundle of rights. And it's like, it's the rights or interests you have in the thing you own. Otherwise, it's like not worth having. A tenant in good standing under a valid 5-year lease, which makes no mention of assignment or subleasing, may legally do with the following. They may sublease the property to another, but only with the consent of the lessor. They may assign, but can't sublease. They may sublease to another, but can assign only with the consent of the lessor. They can sublease or assign the leasehold to anyone, since the lease made no mention of any restrictions on such action.
D.
E as in dog.
Yeah, they can do both because it didn't say they can't do it. Now, if a lease says you're not supposed to sublease and you do it anyways, it makes the lease voidable, but it doesn't make it void. It just makes the landlord able to void it. But who knows, maybe you subleased it to a super hot chick who invites him in for coffee and donuts every Saturday. And he's like, yeah, I'm liking this, right? So it makes it voidable, but not void. So, if it doesn't mention it, you can do it. But if it does mention it and you do it, it only becomes voidable, not void. When comparing condos and rented apartment, oh, this is a good one. Which of the following is true? The person who occupies each unit has an estate in real property. The occupier has a fee estate. The local tax assessor must assess each unit of the subdivision separately, or none of the above.
East.
What did you say?
C.
I said east.
No, it's A as an apple.
Mm.
When you own a condo, you have a fee or freehold estate, which is an estate in real property. And when you rent an apartment, you have a less than freehold or leasehold estate, which is also an estate in real property.
Mm.
Right? When you own a condo, you have a fee or freehold estate. And when you have an apartment, you have a less than freehold or leasehold estate. They're both estates in real property. One is real property and one's a chattel real.
Mm.
Another name for an estate of inheritance is a fee simple to feasible, an estate at sufferance, an estate in fee, a probate estate.
Okay.
C, estate in fee. It's called an estate of inheritance because we don't know when we're going to croak, right? We don't know when we're going to kick our bucket, and when we do, someone inherits our property. So an estate in fee is also known as an estate of inheritance because when we die, someone's going to inherit it, even if it's the state.
It's funny.
Dave gave a grant deed to John transferring title to the house. The title was subject to a condition stating that the title would be forfeited if alcoholic beverages are ever sold on the property. John would have which one of the following estates? A fee simple absolute, a fee simple to feasible, an estate in forfeiture, or a less than freehold estate?
B.
Right, what's the new word for defeasible?
Determinable.
Terminable. And they also use the word defeasance clause. It has a defeasance clause. So defeasible, defeasance clause, determinable are all synonyms for each other.
Determinable.
Hey, do you want to know my favorite joke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
What does a thesaurus have for breakfast?
What?
What does a thesaurus eat for breakfast?
What?
Synonym rolls.
Oh my,
Those defeasible, defeasance, and determinable are all synonyms.
okay, mom joke.
Okay, okay.
Oh, that was cheesy,
I
Kathy.
know, you have to teach kids when they're old enough to understand what a synonym is.
Yeah, I'll be having that soon.
Family rents a vacation home from September 1st, 2002 to January 1st, 2003. The tenancy would properly be classified as month-to-month, a periodic tenancy, a fee simple estate, or an estate for years.
This is easy. Come on. Easy.
And
The
a state for
Periodic
you.
tenancy.
D.
An estate for years. Remember, a start date and an end date can be measured in
Oh,
months or
that's
years. Periodic tenancies are month to month, week to week, year to year.
So
So
if it
month to
didn't,
month and a periodic are synonyms for each other.
so if it didn't have the day on the month and year, it would have been
Hmm.
periodic.
No, it would have been only if it would be successive periods of the same amount of time. So it would have to say month to month, like this one does, or year to year,
Oh, month to
or
month.
week to week. If it has a start date and an end date of any kind, September, if they have 7 years, if they have a tenancy for 7 years, they have a tenancy for 6 months, that's considered a start and an end date. September to January, that's start and an end date. A person who held a life estate leased the property for 5 years and then died 1 month after signing the lease. The new owners ordered the lessee to move out. The lease was valid for 5 years, valid only as long as the lessor was alive, invalid from the beginning, invalid unless the deceased executor confirmed it.
B.
Yeah. Since he had a life estate, he owns it for that 5-year period, and he can do whatever, I mean, for the estate of his life, and he had every right to rent it out, and he doesn't know when he's gonna die, and he croaked, but so then, yeah, the lessee was SOL, out of luck. The holder of a life estate can only lease that which he had, which was the use of the property until he died. Which of the following would be defined as a fixture in the law? Something that is made a part of the chattel reel, something referred to by actions but not referred to in the sales contract, something incorporated into the land, something that is used in an extraordinary way with the land.
A.
See.
C.
It's C.
Oh.
Chattel reel is always going to be like chattel reel is literally
Ooh.
Fixture in the land. Thinking of fixtures in the. I'm thinking of that fixture, but not in the land.
yeah, that's
Joking.
yeah. A fixture is something that's incorporated into the land.
Yeah, yeah.
It's attached to the land in a way that it becomes real property. Mrs. Smith held a life estate in a single family residence. The estate was based upon her own life. She leased the residence to Mr. Jones for 5 years, but died a few weeks after the lease began. This sounds exactly like the question 2 questions ago, and this does happen on the state exams. The lease was invalid on its face because the holder of the life estate doesn't have the right to lease property, valid for the remaining term of the lease, valid only during the life of the lessor, valid only if Mr. Jones was unaware of the life estate when the lease was created.
Oh, C.
Yes, the life of the lessor.
Okay.
Which of the following is not a characteristic of a fee simple title? It is real encumbrances. It's of indefinite duration. It is transferable with or without consideration. It is transferable by will or intestate.
Oh, wait.
So we don't know about, let's break down the question. I think you guys say, I don't know if A is correct or not. You know what I mean? Like, is a
What
fee
if
simple
it's
estate real encumbrances? I don't know.
No.
Is a fee simple estate indefinite duration? Yes, because I don't know when I'm gonna croak. Is it transferable with or without consideration? Yeah, I can sell it or I can give it away because I love my granddaughter so much, right? Is it transferable by will or intestate? When I die, can it go into my will, or can I die without a will and it'll still go somewhere? Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
the
it's
one that's wrong is the first one,
mm-hmm.
not a characteristic of it. So definitely, if you don't know one, go to the other ones and be like, okay, is this right or wrong? Is this right or wrong? Know why the right answer is right. And if you're not sure, go to all the other ones, because a lot of times you'll be able to eliminate them and be like, oh yeah, this is for sure the wrong one now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Which of the following rights of ownership in real property do individuals normally not have? Severance rights, eminent domain rights, riparian rights, or reliction rights?
I don't know what,
Eminent
election-
domain.
In the domain.
It's eminent domain. Eminent domain is the right of the government to take back your land for some sort of public use, like to build an airport or put a bunch of solar fields or windmills or train stations, fast trains, whatever they call them, the ones that are going through Acton. So eminent domain rights are for the government to take back your land, but not like a person. Like Walmart can't decide, hey, we really think it'll be better to have a Walmart here than your farm. So we're going to take it and build a Walmart. Like it can't be like that. It's only for like things like for airports and public transportation and trains and, you know, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Severance rights would be like severing yourself from a property. So like you could give away a property or whatever. So individuals can do that. Riparian rights are the rights an individual has when they border a stream or a lake or a water course. And I forget what the reliction rights are, to be honest with you. And I don't feel like looking it up right now. As used in real property law, which of the following is most nearly correct as the meaning of the word tenancy? The landlord-tenant relationship, the obstinacy of a holdover tenant, the mode or method of holding title to real property by a lessee or owner, or none of the above.
See?
D?
It's C, the mode or method holding to real property, right? They're talking about tenancy. So we have joint tenancy, tenancy in common, like we have community property, we have severalty. Those are all ways you own property, right?
Yes.
And then we have like the estate at sufferance, the estate at will. We have the estate for years and the periodic tenancy. Those are all the ones that are less than freehold. So the word tenancy can go for a leasehold estate or a fee or freehold estate. So tenancy has to do with how you have title. Which of the following is regarded as personal property interest? All buildings erected on a parcel, a stand of virgin timber, leasehold estates and real property, the rights to the unextracted minerals. Which one of those is considered personal property?
Leasehold estate?
Leasehold estates, right. A lease is what? A piece of paper that's movable. Buildings on a parcel are considered real property. Virgin timber is like, it's actually the trees still standing there. Do you know what I mean? So they're in the dirt, and unextracted minerals are still in the dirt. So everything else is considered real property, but a leasehold estate is personal property, also known as a chattel reel. And the word chattel sounds like cattle because it's movable. So chattel means personal property, anything that would be chattel. When the state is given permission of a non-riparian owner to use a nearby lake, the owner has received rights by eminent domain, estoppel, percolation, or appropriation.
Estoppel?
It's appropriation. They're allowing you to take water for your use. So back in the day, think about like Little House on the Prairie, right? Everyone wanted to live on a lake or a river or whatever for their crops, but not everybody got the land right on the river, right? There's way more land in between rivers. So what did they do? They had to allow like other people access to the river to get water to water their crops and feed their animals, right? So rights of appropriation became a thing, so people didn't have to necessarily live right on the river to actually have water rights. Eminent domain, remember, is the right of the government to take back your land for public use, for courts and things like that. Stoppel, the word stop is in there. It's like to stop doing something. And percolation is like a test they do to see how sandy your soil is for when they put in like a septic tank. Like how fast is the water gonna run through when you're having a septic tank. Estoppel is the principle of law that bars people from asserting certain rights. Eminent domain is the right of the state to take property for public use. And then here, percolation is the ability of soil to absorb. So just so you know, when you guys guess on this, it's going to give you the answers for other things too. So make sure you're always reading this because it could be very helpful to help you study. Do a few more of these. Which of the following is the legal method that a city uses to implement its general plan? Variance, general land use, zoning, or conditional use permits?
Zoning.
Zoning is the way the city implements its general plan. They use zoning laws. When rent is computed on the gross sales of a business occupying a real property, the lease is termed a net lease, gross lease, voidable lease, or percentage lease.
Percentage?
A
Yeah.
is an apple.
It's a percentage lease. If they're telling you the gross sales, they're saying they're going to take a percentage of your gross sales as the amount for your rent. In a percentage lease, the rent is tied to a percentage of the gross receipts of a business. Oftentimes businesses start you out like that because they know that initially you're not going to make a lot of money and they need to like let you make money to keep rolling into the business, because if they, until you get up to a place where they're getting their normal rent, you know, like a flat rate, but they'll let you usually work out a deal where you're paying a percentage of your gross expense or your gross receipts to them, because two things. One is if many businesses fail in that location, it becomes a bad location and no, you know, commercial landlord wants to have that place vacant because people think it's bad, right? And secondly, they know it takes time for you to get your name out there and kind of build your business. If a man has a freehold estate, which of the following would result in his having a less than freehold estate? So he has a freehold estate, he owns it. How could he turn it into a leasehold estate? A sale and lease back, selling the mineral rights to a third party, giving a leasehold interest for 5 years, or granting a life estate?
A is an apple.
A.
Yeah, he would sell it and lease it back. So he would go from having a fee or freehold estate to a less than freehold estate by selling it and then leasing it back. And he would do this for a couple of reasons. Let's say he owns a building and he does a t-shirt shop in it. He makes a bunch of t-shirts in there. Well, if he sells his building, he can get all that money for the building and then he can buy lots more t-shirts and lots more prints and stuff to make his t-shirts. And then he gets to deduct 100% of his future rent paid. Whereas when he owned the building, he couldn't deduct all the money he was paying in his mortgage because that was just like the cost of doing business. If a man leased a store for only 6 months, he would have an estate from period to period, an estate for years, an estate at will, or an estate at sufferance.
A.
No,
Years.
a period to period is month to month, week to week, year to year. An estate for years has a start date and an end date. It has a specific period of time.
Oh, the 6 months.
The 6 months is a specific period of time.
Okay.
It didn't say he released a store for recurring periods of 6 months. If they'd say recurring periods of 6 months, then it would be a period to period. But because it's just 6 months, 7 years, 1 year, 32 days, 8 days, those are all considered an estate for years. Or a random this day to this day is a random amount of days, then that's an estate for years. It's one of the ones that people get confused on like a lot. Even though I say it like a million, jillion, billion times. The remedy of unlawful detainer action is used by offended grantors, holders of notices in default, lessors, or trustors. You guys probably didn't get this yet. An unlawful detainer action is a fancy word for eviction. An unlawful detainer action is a fancy word for eviction. So who evicts people?
The holder of the note.
No. Lessors.
Lessors.
Lessors are landlords and they would evict their tenants for not paying rent. So lessors would use an unlawful detainer action to get rid of a crappy tenant. Which of the following is considered personal property? An easement, mineral rights, an existing mortgage, or trees growing in a forest?
E.
D.
C, an existing mortgage. Mineral rights are, minerals are in the land. An easement is part of the land, and growing trees in a forest are part of land. An existing mortgage is a piece of paper. It's another piece of paper that says, if I don't buy, if I don't pay, you can sell. It's a piece of paper that's movable, just like a lease is a movable piece of paper. A mortgage is exactly the same thing. It's the document that says, hey, you can sell my property if I don't pay you. One more. Which of the following would not be classified as real property? Pertinent easements, water courses, unextracted minerals, or leasehold estates and residential properties?
D is
A leasehold estate, right? It's a piece of paper.
Mhm.
Okay, we're gonna save this test too. So I want you guys to either do the CompuTrainer one or the Prep Agent one this week. I want you to do all of it. So if you're doing the Prep Agent, I'd want it to be the 100 questions. If you can do that, I want you to text me a picture of it. If you want to do the CompuTrainer one, then come in here and do this one and text me a picture of your score at the end of it. Prep Agent is cool because you can save it in the middle and come back to it. You just have to remember where your test was. CompuTrainer doesn't work like that. You have to finish.
Mhm.
Because it'll literally overwrite your previously saved test if you try to save it, and then somebody else may have tried to save a test. So you just need to take the whole thing. Does anybody have questions after? Okay, so this week we're supposed to watch chapters 3 and 4 and read book 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4. And if you're doing the slower course, you'd also, no, 1 and 2. No, this is only second week. Yeah. So 3 and 4, you're going to watch the videos and read the book, chapters 3 and 4. And you're going to send me a test from what was this, property interests? Something about property in both of them. All right. And next week, we're going to go over questions that would relate to chapters 3 and 4. So you guys can participate. And I want to say, out of whatever, 13, 14 of you on here, I think 3 people actually sent me questions. So 3 of you are doing what you're supposed to do.
I'm sending mine.
11 of you are not.
I'm sending it right after this. I'm sending it.
I'm not calling you out in front of everybody, Jarita.
You called my name. I heard you.
That's the good Christian girl in you talking.
Yes, you made me feel guilty.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna use every
know
method
how-
I can.
You
to
know
get-
how Christians are. We get guilty real fast.
Yep. But I'm gonna use all my wiles to get you guys to pass. Hopefully you all, literally, I want you all to be done with me, like pretty much in like November, December, and then like be ready to take the test in January, and then be done like by February if you did fail for whatever reason because you didn't listen to me before.
There
And
you
then,
go
yeah,
again.
I'll tell you, you're not ready. Like I've told a lot of people, you shouldn't take the test. You're not ready. Very rarely do they pass when I say that.
I already know, Kathy.
All right. That's my goal. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to text me. I know sometimes I don't mean to be short on text. I'm very direct on text. I'm not a very good morning. Well, I don't know, my brain. I have so many people hitting me up with things. I just try to get right to the answer. So I apologize if I'm not all friendly because I am super friendly if you would call me like, hey, how you doing? But anyway, I'll try to be better at that. And you can say, hey, good morning to you too, or whatever, and call me out too. I'm fine with that. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. Anyways, y'all have a good night and we'll see you next week. Peace out.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kathy.
all right, Kathy.
So-
Are you in
Thank you.
Wisconsin? Are you back in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I went on the lake today. We were on the lake today. This is like, we had an 86-degree day today. So
I was
took
gonna
the
say,
kids out.
oh,
Yeah,
cool, right on.
we're having 80
We're-
days. So it's been nice.
We're 60s and 70s here, so
I
enjoy.
know. But it's going to drop to the 60s in a couple days. So then we'll have Tehachapi weather.
Yep.
Sounds good,
Thank you,
darling. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.